This is Leeds, a city in the north of England and home to over 250,000 people. As with other UK cities, Leeds has recently seen large-scale regeneration, with modern apartments enticing people into city centre living. It's not the first time the city has seen major changes to the way its residents live. To the east of the hedgerow is the Quarry Hill site. It's now home to the city's cultural quarter, with the Northern Ballet, the BBC, the Leeds College of Music and the West Yorkshire Playhouse all residing there. It's also home to many government departments in the Quarry House. But back in 1938, something else stood here. Something that proudly dominated the Leeds skyline and shaped many generations to come. This was the Quarry Hill Flats, the largest housing complex of its type in the world, providing homes for over 3,000 people.
Quarry Hill owes its genesis to a remarkable man called the Reverend Charles Jenkinson. Jenkinson was an Anglican vicar from London originally, and he asked his bishop he wanted to be posted to the most difficult parish in England, and he was sent to Holbeck in Leeds. And this was about 1927 he came to Leeds, and he was appalled at the conditions he saw around him in Holbeck, and he became determined to do something about it. I mean, it wasn't just the terrace houses that we still have and love in Leeds. These were appalling back-to-backs with mid-ins, no space at all, no running water and so on. Well, the first thing, of course, was Jenkinson's overall idea to get rid of the insanitary conditions that prevailed in Holbeck and in other parts of Leeds, and to enable people to have a decent life and a decent set of conditions where they could actually bring their children up, where there would be education and so on.
It was at this house on Great George Street that Jenkinson worked on his plans for Quarry Hill. But he needed help for his vision to succeed.
He got to know of an architect and a director of housing in Manchester called R.A.H. Livett, also a socialist as it happens, and the two of them, with the tremendous support of the director of environmental health, a man called Dr. Jervis, the three of them were the key instigators and pushers for this development, and through that, by being in charge of the council just for 2 years actually, 33 to 35, the whole plan was put into operation to build Quarry Hill.
The plans were quickly approved and construction of the flats was soon underway. The construction techniques used were modern, with an on-site factory making the concrete blocks that covered the huge metal structure. Each block within the complex was given a name, which related to prominent people from local history, except for Victoria House, which was named after the Queen. The prospect of living in such modern abodes was immediately popular, with people queuing to secure a dwelling there.
They had come from appalling slum conditions, and therefore to move into property which was spacious, which was not so close to other people that you didn't have some privacy, and to be able to have your children with decent air, open air conditions next to them, was a tremendous change for people.
Former residents say life was good at Quarry Hill Flats.
We were overcrowded in Woodhouse, so to get a 5-bedroom house in Quarry Hill Flats was like a palace. Each of us had his own bedrooms, which were great. It was marvellous.
My childhood was lovely. I really enjoyed it. It was, everybody You could go down and you just all played together. Yeah, it was a lovely time. I really enjoyed it. We'd go play kick-out can.
We used to play kick-out can on an evening in the summer, and I loved playing two balls, and I loved playing one ball. Bottom at flats had archways, and I used to throw a ball and jump up. I thought that was fabulous. And we used to have concerts for all kids in, you know, that openings in flats. And me and Kathleen O'Neill, we used to boss all kids, have them all sat on the floor doing concerts and making them know stuff.
I mean, I remember even going up onto the roofs, because you could get on the roofs and running around on the roofs. God, if my kids had done out like that, I'd have died. I wouldn't let them out of the garden.
Then we used to do dens on landing. You put sheets over dens, and people were trying to come up and downstairs and you were there with your den. I used to love dens.
The 3,000 residents had the benefits of spacious living and play areas for their children. But there were other benefits too.
In addition to that, of course, you had this Gartrey refuse disposal system where it all went down a hole in effect and was carried away with something remarkable, as opposed to the middens and so on and the bad toilet conditions that you had where they come from. And indeed, what prevailed on the Quarry Hill site before you got the flats. The housing conditions were grim there as well. So you had that real benefit to people. Then, of course, you had the communal facilities as well, which people took advantage of, and people just enjoyed the new status they had.
With everything there, you know, bathroom, where we had to go in Woodhouse, we had to go right to the top of the house for a bath. They were all on one level. They tell me, when they first moved in there, they kept calling the bath, they wondered what it was for. Yeah. We don't get washed in that, you know what I mean?
Well, I had to go to wash house with my mum. I always had to go there with her. You had to go help, and I used to love it in there and all because you'd got all the big dryers.
There were these big doors, and I remember you used to pull them out, and once your washing had come out of the washer, you swung them over these rails and just push it back in, and I remember that, yeah.
Wash house was a frightening place. It frightened me to death as a kid. Unbelievable. I'd never go with her, like, you know. They used to open them big steam doors and I'd pull them off.
Every week, from I being about 9, I used to go to wash house. First with my mother, and then with myself, because she said they were all scandal mongers who went to wash house.
And you'd just be chatting and finding out everybody's business, usually, I think it was.
I learned to iron in wash house, and my mother bought our Magda, who were really pretty, this beautiful, fancy little yellow dress. So I decided to iron it in the wash house and put the big hole in it.
My mum used to think she was dragging me along, but she wasn't really. I right enjoyed it. In
addition to the wash house, there were other amenities such as shops and storage areas for hawkers and bicycles.
There was a sweet shop there. I just don't remember the names. I know the fish shop, Emmett's. I always remember that, and that was fish and chips and a bag of scraps, and the scraps were absolutely, and the chips, everything were lovely of them. We didn't get fish very often. I don't even remember having a fish cake. I've had a fish cake, but not a fish.
Well, the main one was the fish shop, because my mum worked there for quite a while. And I hope, well, probably people who run the fish shop are probably dead now, so I can say this, but I used to go in with, if you go back prior to 71, say with £1, and I used to get sort of 4 times 2 bottles of pop, and I used to give her the £1 and she'd give me sort of most of it back. But I just sort of nip in and just take all the stuff and walk away. So I remember the fish shop well. I used to have a lot of fish and chips because they hardly cost anything, you know. We used to feed well on the fish shop.
The market were there, so if you wanted out fresh vegetables, it was a 2-minute walk, wasn't it? Whichever part of the flats you lived on. I mean, if you wanted to go to Tommy Tomasso's, you could do, like, you know what I mean?
And we used to go to Tomasso's. I forgot about Tomasso's. You could buy a woodbine, 1 or 2 woodbines, yeah, and we were quite often going for woodbines. That's why I'm still bloody smoking today.
In 1951, a BBC radio programme on the flats angered residents as it appeared to portray them in a negative way. A petition was raised and sent to the BBC to refute their apparent view of the flats as a dump and a slum area. This tarnished reputation was one the media constantly affiliated with the flats.
Even today, talking about housing estates, you know, they've got bad reputations, but unless you actually live there, you'll never know what it's like.
If they've never been in there before and you've come into the place, it was a frightening place for some people. It never affected me, as I say. I went to school across the road, St Charles's, you know, and everything around me.
The one thing, it was Thorsby House had a bit for fighting and stuff, lads. But otherwise it was, otherwise I don't remember it being rough, no. Unless we was rough and we didn't know it, but I don't think we was.
You never saw any bother, you know, you never had all this thieving and stealing cars and things like that, and everybody looked after everybody else.
We used to have the key, put your hand through letterbox and key hanging down at the back. You could do that then.
Once there are plans for demolition of an area, then people who can do move out, and people who are desperate for accommodation are the ones who move in often enough, and it gives an imbalance of the kind of tenants you have. It became part of the accepted myth this was dreadful and it should be demolished. It was not the case.
Discovery of rust on the metal support structure caused the local council to call for the flats to be demolished. Although there were people campaigning for the council to spend a relatively low amount of money to fix the issue, which would have extended the life of the flats by a further 20 years, it was decided that demolition would take place and the huge task of rehousing the tenants began.
My grandma and granddad were one of the last ones to move in the Jackson house, and he were worse. It were worse for him to have to leave. It were, you know, he were really upset about leaving, and my mum says, "Oh, it'll kill him leaving."
We actually had a big family, and we had 5 bedrooms in our house. And the one we moved to was in our flat, I suppose. The one we moved to was a house, but it only had 3 bedrooms. Community-wise, just lost everything. You know, 1 or 2 people moved in our area. But you didn't just have to live in a particular house in Quarry Hill to be friends with people. I had friends all over Quarry Hill, you know, and you just lost all that community spirit. Basically, it didn't exist once you moved away. I mean, nowadays, there's no such thing as community spirit, because the community spirit, not just here, but I think all over the country, has just disappeared. And with places like Quarry Hill, that's where it disappeared with that, basically, yeah.
As soon as you went through that arch, you knew you were home. Even though you were in the arch, you hadn't even opened your flat door, you hadn't even pulled the block door open at the bottom. You knew you were home, and it didn't matter. You knew you were safe.
Happy times, very, yeah. Good times, yeah. Enjoyed it. I wish I'd have still been there, not got married, not put married.
It was just a lovely time of my life, and I wished I could have had it back again. I wish my children could have had it, but obviously, you know, it's not gonna be. But if they could have had that, then I'm sure they'd understand how I feel now about it.
I wouldn't have missed it for the world. My kids have been brought up on Seacroft, and I think they've missed something by not being brought up in where I was brought up. I think they've missed something. I don't know how to put my finger on it. I can't put it into words, but I do think they've missed something.
The Quarry Hill flats personified Jenkinson's vision for a stronger community by providing people with improved housing conditions. Although it's doubtful the UK will ever see social housing on such a grand scale again, the Quarry Hill legacy lives on.